Hey there, survivors. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's episode. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. It really helps me keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now let's get started. I open my eyes to the glare of overhead lights. My forehead is wrapped in gauze, and my limbs ache as if I've been used as a punching bag. Rows of cots stretch in every direction, each occupied by individuals in various states of recovery. Metallic partitions have been set up to form a makeshift clinic within what looks like a massive aircraft hangar. Rust stains dot the curved ceiling, and half the overhead lighting flickers in an unsteady rhythm. I try to sit up, but a wave of disorientation sets in. A person wearing a worn-out medical vest rushes to my side. She introduces herself as Hannah, apparently the nurse on duty, though she speaks with a caution that suggests I should remain still for a moment. She checks the bandages on my head and taps a digital thermometer against my arm. "Your fever is down," she says in a soft voice. "Try not to overexert yourself." The hum of generators resonates through the space, mingling with the chatter of voices. I see volunteers distributing canned goods from large crates. Several people in military-style jackets patrol the perimeter of the hangar, rifles slung over their shoulders. Beyond the high doors, the faint sound of vehicles driving by indicates the presence of additional security. Each time the wind gusts through the cracks, the interior lights sway ever so slightly. Hannah notices my confusion and gives me a mild smile. "You've been out for 3 days," she explains. "We found you near the wreckage of a plane crash. The fact that you're here at all is a miracle. We didn't think anyone survived." I look at her blankly, searching the corridors of my mind for an explanation of how I ended up in a plane crash. Empty spaces greet every question. My memories feel locked away. I glance at the cast encasing my left arm. How many bones did I break? How am I able to move? Hannah places a small cup of water to my lips and helps me drink. "This is a refugee clinic, set up inside an old aviation hangar in Detroit," she continues. "We're doing what we can to handle the situation out there." She doesn't have to specify what situation means. It's clear from the urgent faces and the regular announcements crackling through a loudspeaker in the distance that there's a crisis beyond these walls. I try to speak, but my throat feels raw. After a few attempts, I manage to whisper, "What happened?" She hesitates, choosing her words carefully. "The world changed. A condition is causing people to return after passing away. Detroit has been sealed off to control the spread. This hangar is one of the last secure locations in the city." Her statement takes time to sink in. I search her face for any sign that this might be an exaggeration or a metaphor. She holds my gaze, and the sincerity in her eyes deepens the unease in my chest. The notion of people returning from death sounds unimaginable, yet the sense of urgency in the hangar is very real. Hannah pulls a folded photograph from the small table beside my cot. "We found this with you," she explains gently. "We don't know your name, and you weren't carrying identification. This was the only clue to your identity." She hands me the photograph. It's wrinkled, edges curling, showing a smiling woman with warm eyes who appears to be standing in front of a modest house. On the back of the photo, there's a name scrawled in faint handwriting. The letters are slightly smudged. I trace my fingertip over it, but the memory associated with that name remains elusive. It could be the name of the woman, or it could be mine. There's a sense of longing whenever I look at her face. It's like a puzzle piece that almost fits, but not quite. "That photo might help you remember who you are," Hannah says. "Try to focus on it. Talk to us if anything comes back." A sturdy man in a faded leather jacket approaches, leaning on the partition. He looks to be in his 40s, his hair peppered with grey. "I'm Bill," he says, keeping his voice low. "I helped pull you out of the plane wreck. You must have had luck on your side." I attempt to offer gratitude, but can only manage a breathy acknowledgement. My gaze shifts to the main doors of the hangar, where armed figures stand guard. On the other side, I hear a commotion. metal scraping and something reminiscent of moans. It makes my stomach twist in knots. Bill notices and nods. "We get visitors," Bill says, gesturing beyond the hangar. "We've fortified this place as best we can, but there's never a guarantee of safety anymore." He explains that a broadcast was sounded across every available frequency, an emergency alert warning of a zombie outbreak in Detroit. People who lost their homes or needed medical care filtered here. Some were separated from their families. Others were searching for survivors. Every person arrived carrying a burden of loss or confusion. Bill gently pats my shoulder, then turns to Hannah. "Let me know if you need anything," he tells her, before walking away to direct a small group of volunteers stacking sandbags. I take the chance to look around more. The hangar's far end houses a makeshift kitchen where a pair of volunteers stir large pots over portable stoves. A row of battered vehicles lines another corner, possibly for supply runs. High above, greenish skylights offer glimpses of a cloudy sky. It's early evening, judging by the diminishing light. I notice an older gentleman lying on a cot nearby, his breathing shallow. A medic murmurs that they're keeping a close watch on him. A few cots away, a young woman attempts to soothe a crying toddler, offering a small plush toy. Despite the tension, there's a sense of determination here. When Hannah finishes checking another patient, she returns to me. "We need to do a thorough exam," she says. "The head injury seems to have affected your memory. Do you recall anything about your flight? Do you know your own name?" I try to concentrate, hoping to find some recollection. My mind conjures fragments of images, a sensation of falling, the roar of engines, bright orange flames dancing across a night sky. But everything else is murky. I press the photograph between my palms as if it might transmit memories back into me. Hannah offers a reassuring look. "It's okay. Sometimes it takes a while for memories to come back. For now, rest. Your body is still recovering from the crash and whatever you endured outside." I manage a nod. She fetches a small notepad and pen, placing them on the table. "Whenever you remember anything, no matter how small, write it down. It could help." The hours pass in a blur of half sleep and occasional check-ins from medics. I drift in and out of awareness. My rest is fitful, punctuated by fragments of dreamlike impressions. Flickers of shattered airplane windows, an oxygen mask dangling, the color of the sky at dusk. The hum of the hangar's generator merges with the echoes in my mind. Eventually, I awaken to a bit more clarity. A buzzing feeling lingers at the base of my skull, but my thoughts are sharper. Hunger gnaws at me. A volunteer named Sam arrives with a tray of food, canned peaches, crackers, and a cup of broth. Sam is a slim figure with curly hair poking from beneath a knit cap. We exchange a few words. He mentions how supply runs have become dangerous, especially since the roads are frequently blocked or patrolled by wandering infected individuals. "Sometimes they appear in large groups," Sam explains. "Other times they move alone. We try not to engage unless there's no other choice. Noise attracts them." I nod slowly. The notion of walking corpses still feels surreal. I glance around for Bill, but he's nowhere in sight. Perhaps he's busy securing the perimeter or doing a supply run himself. Later, I attempt to stand. Hannah spots me and gently guides me back down. "Not yet," she cautions. "Your injuries need more time." Time takes on a strange quality in this environment. There are no windows to mark the passing days, and the overhead lights buzz relentlessly. However, each day, a voice over the loudspeaker recites the date and issues bulletins. Which streets to avoid, new safe zones, changes to quarantine procedures. One morning, the voice mentions an escalation in the outbreak across major metropolitan areas. The infection is not contained, and a warning is issued for all survivors to remain indoors if possible. Bill visits again during a midday lull. He hands me a notepad with scribbled notes about the plane. "I went back to the crash site with some folks," he says. "We wanted to see if there were any more survivors or supplies. Didn't find anyone else alive. We did manage to salvage a few items." He points to a small stack of clothing near my cot. That might fit you. I sift through the garments, relieved to have something other than a hospital gown. Among them is a faded jacket with pockets. In the inside lining, I discover a key attached to a small chain. Bill watches me with curiosity. Any idea what that belongs to? My memory refuses to cooperate. The key is small, shaped in a manner that suggests it might fit a personal locker or perhaps a safe deposit box. I shake my head. Bill offers a hint of empathy. Don't push yourself. It'll come back eventually. He points towards the photograph on my table. Do you recognize her? He asks, eyeing the writing on the back. The writing is barely legible, but it seems to read Marina. Whether that's her name or an inscription, I'm not certain. Still, the sight of her expression stirs something that feels important. It's not completely clear, I admit, but I feel like I should know her. Bill nods. Keep that close. It might help you remember. With that, he heads off to help reinforce the barricades at the hangar doors. Days pass in a hazy routine of checkups, restless attempts to recall any detail of my past, and observing the grim reality that Detroit has become. Through overheard conversations, I learn that neighborhoods once full of life are now deserted. Certain blocks echo with strange sounds in the night. Survivors gather here with the hope of evacuation or rescue, but official broadcasts claim resources are stretched thin nationwide. The infection apparently started somewhere in the southern states, then moved quickly. Now it's everywhere. Occasionally, new refugees arrive at the hangar. They carry stories of close calls. Some mention entire streets being overrun. Others bring grim tidings of a lack of federal assistance. Hannah, Bill, and the rest of the volunteers do their best to provide comfort. There's a bulletin board with missing persons notices, pictures and descriptions tacked up by those searching for loved ones. One evening, after the lights have dimmed, I manage to stand and walk slowly around the clinic area. My legs protest, but I need to move. I pass a section where an older woman named Patrice organizes medical supplies. We exchange polite greetings. Beyond her station, a heavy sliding door leads to the outside. It's guarded by two men who keep watch on anything that might approach. I can't resist venturing closer to that door. I see movement through a gap in the metal, shapes across the darkened runway. One of the guards, a tall man with a bulletproof vest labeled Marcus, explains quietly. They come and go. Sometimes they stray onto the airfield. We keep it as secure as we can. He nods toward a row of barricades made from shipping containers and overturned vehicles. Do you see them clearly? I ask, not entirely sure I want an answer. More than enough, he replies. They shuffle around without purpose, from what I can tell. Some nights they bump into our barricades or they claw at the metal, but if we keep quiet, most drift away eventually. My stomach clenches. The realization that the world has changed so drastically in an unknown span of time is overwhelming. I return to my cot and try to steady my thoughts. Another day, a new wave of chaos strikes when an unexpected surge of infected crowds near the chain-link fence outside the hangar. Alarms ring out, and volunteers rush to fortify the gates. I watch from a safe distance as Bill and Marcus fire warning shots into the air. The tactic works momentarily, scattering a few of the creatures, but also attracting others in the distance. Hannah and her helpers remain calm, guiding people away from potential danger. Although the situation is handled without major harm, the tension in the hangar escalates. After the immediate crisis passes, Bill calls a meeting for anyone who's well enough to attend. Groups cluster around an overturned crate that serves as a podium. Bill outlines a plan to gather more supplies from a nearby warehouse. People volunteer for roles, scouting, driving, or keeping watch. I remain silent, uncertain of what I can offer given my shaky condition. That night, exhaustion leads me into a disturbed sleep. Images flash through my mind. The roar of aircraft engines, a seatbelt cutting into my waist, the plane dropping at an unnatural angle, sparks outside the window, and a frantic attempt to brace for impact. Then, a sharp jolt as we hit the ground, screeching metal, intense flames licking at the fuselage. After that, darkness. I jolt awake, pressing a hand against the bandage on my head. Sweat covers my face, and my breathing feels unsteady. Hannah notices from across the aisle and walks over with a cup of water. "You're remembering," she says quietly. I nod, still trying to settle my thoughts. The memory of the crash is terrifying, yet something else haunts me. The recollection of a voice, possibly the woman in the photograph. She might have been speaking to me mid-flight, or maybe just before we boarded. Over the following days, I push myself to walk around more, determined to regain my strength. I help Patrice organize medical bins, though I'm still learning my own limits. Each time I feel stable enough, I step outside with Sam or Bill to gather water from a tank. It's a short distance from the hangar, but the stillness of the deserted airfield is eerie. Even though large cargo planes once took off from here, the place is now silent except for the wind. Broken glass litters the ground. Some private jets remain parked in disarray, their windows shattered and exteriors battered. I wonder if any of them might be operational, but Bill says that maintenance is out of the question without specialists or the right parts. Besides, we have nowhere safe to land. The infection has spread globally. Bit by bit, certain memories begin to resurface. I recall flight attendants giving safety instructions, a conversation with someone about a business trip, or a family reunion. My mind isn't sure which. The photograph of the smiling woman always comes to mind during these recollections, as if she were related to the trip. The name on the back, Marina, conjures fleeting impressions of familiarity. One afternoon, Marcus and Tanya, another guard, return from a short scouting trip to find a path through the city. They say many roads are blocked by abandoned cars. The local grocery stores are picked clean. Houses are boarded up. Some buildings show signs of forced entry, with broken doors or shattered windows. The streets are strangely quiet, except for occasional signs of movement that vanish when approached. They also mention seeing large billboard warnings about the outbreak. Hannah suggests that I might benefit from stepping outside more, provided I have protection. She believes that seeing the environment might trigger additional memories. Although the thought of encountering infected individuals is unsettling, I agree it might help me put the pieces together. Bill lends me a thick jacket, explaining that the temperature has dropped. Detroit's weather can be unpredictable, especially with limited access to proper heating. With a small group, we venture beyond the hangar walls for the first time since I woke up. Marcus leads the way, rifle in hand. Sam carries a radio. We move carefully across the cracked tarmac, weaving around debris. A gust of wind carries the scent of burned fuel. The further we walk, the more remnants of the old world appear. A row of luggage carts abandoned in a corner, scattered clothing, the shell of a shuttle bus. Eventually, we reach a collapsed perimeter fence. This is where Bill says they pulled me from the plane. Charred metal fragments are strewn about, some pieces half buried in the mud. A few burnt seats are recognizable in the wreckage. Standing at the crash site sends waves of conflicting feelings through me. I see scorched earth, blackened by the flames. The twisted remains of the fuselage lie in a heap, a silent testament to the violence of the impact. I pick up a bent piece of metal with partially visible letters, maybe part of the airline's name. My memory stirs, but it's elusive. "Any recollections?" Bill asks, stepping carefully to avoid sharp metal edges. Marcus keeps watch from a short distance, scanning the horizon. "Bits and pieces," I reply, crouching by a scorched suitcase. A name tag reads Karen Barnes, but there's no guarantee that person made it out. I feel a deep sense of guilt for not remembering more. So many lives were surely lost here, and I survived without any explanation. Sam calls softly from a few yards away. "I found something," he says, holding up a battered piece of fabric. It appears to be part of a satchel or bag. Inside it, there's a partially melted ID card. The name is unreadable, the photo blackened at the edges. Sam hands it to me, as if it might jog my memory. I stare at it for a long moment, but nothing specific comes. A wave of frustration builds. but I keep my composure. Marcus signals that we should return, mindful of the time. The sun is beginning to descend, and we want to be back behind the barricades before the shadows get long. The infected may wander any time, but they seem to be more active at dusk and night. We make our way back, passing more remnants of the old airport infrastructure. Broken lights, toppled signs, and a deserted security checkpoint. When we finally enter the safety of the hangar, we find Hannah waiting. She checks me over for any signs of overexertion. "Don't push yourself too hard," she reminds me. "Trauma and amnesia can be stubborn." Despite the day's effort, I feel an odd sense of accomplishment. I confronted the site of the crash, even if it didn't solve my identity puzzle completely. That night, while trying to rest, I reflect on the faces around me, survivors coping with personal losses and exhaustion. I realize we share a collective determination to cling to a semblance of hope. In the midst of these thoughts, I finally drift into a dreamless sleep. The next morning, an alert resounds over the loudspeaker. "Attention, all personnel. Prepare for potential infiltration at the north fence. Remain on standby." Everyone jolts into action. Bill and Marcus rush to gather their rifles. Volunteers form small squads, checking the doors and barricades. Patients who can move stand by with improvised weapons, ready to defend the hangar if needed. A hush falls over the group as we wait. Through small windows near the top of the hangar, we see movement. Shapes press against the chain-link fence on the north side of the property. The fence rattles but holds firm. Bill gestures for everyone to keep quiet. Eventually, the crowd outside disperses, drawn away by something beyond our range of sight. It's a collective sigh of relief, but the tension lingers in the air like a storm cloud. In the days that follow, I dedicate myself to helping around the hangar. I carry boxes, assist with distributing supplies, and try to be useful to those who are in worse shape. That sense of purpose anchors me. Whenever I look at the photograph of Marina, assuming that's her name, I feel a pull toward recollecting more. I start to wonder if there's a chance she is still in the city. What if she survived and is waiting somewhere? I confide in Hannah about these thoughts. She suggests we might try to search the city for clues. Perhaps the address of the house in the photo could lead somewhere. The suggestion sparks a sense of resolve. However, Bill and Marcus caution that leaving the safety of the hangar is risky. Patrols encounter infected regularly, and we have limited weapons. Still, I argue that if there's even a slight chance Marina is alive, I need to find out. We plan a trip. Bill, Marcus, Sam and I will take a small truck that was repaired recently. It runs, though it's not in great shape. We'll head into the heart of Detroit, compare the streets to the photo if possible, and see if we can find any clue about this house. Hannah looks uneasy, but understands the importance of my search. On the morning of our departure, Hannah hands me a small first aid kit. She also checks my head wound one more time, ensuring the stitches have healed adequately. A wave of gratitude washes over me as I realize how much these people have done. I no longer feel like a nameless stranger among them. I sense a connection, even though our time together has been brief. We load into the truck. Marcus drives, Bill navigates, Sam sits in the back with me, rifle at his side. We approach the battered airport exit, where 2 guards remove the barricades to let us through. The city outside is eerily vacant. Buildings with broken windows loom over cracked streets. Debris, abandoned cars, and scattered trash give every corner a desolate look. Once in a while, we see vague silhouettes staggering through alleyways. Marcus steers carefully, avoiding direct contact whenever possible. Bill tries to match the skyline with mental maps of Detroit he remembers. We pass a toppled billboard that once advertised a new smartphone. Now it displays painted warnings about the undead. After traversing a few blocks, we slow near an intersection where a pharmacy sign flickers, half the letters burnt out. We see movement inside, so we move on quickly, not wanting to risk an encounter. As we continue, the city reveals glimpses of what was lost. Colorful murals marred by damage, streetlights dangling from power lines, and entire stretches of row houses boarded up. The occasional sound of distant footsteps or a muffled moan reminds us that we're not alone. Marcus maintains a steady pace, keeping the engine from drawing too much attention. Bill spots a landmark, a weathered water tower behind an industrial park. He consults with Sam about the approximate location of the neighborhood in the photograph. We drive deeper into an older residential district. Large trees line the roads, some branches snapped and lying across the asphalt. Every few blocks, we see dwellings with shutters sealed tight. Others are left wide open, as if their occupants fled in a hurry. After a careful search, we find a street that vaguely matches the one in the photo. The house in the picture had a distinct porch with latticework. We scan the block until we see something similar, a small home with partial brick siding and a collapsed porch swing. We park a short distance away, conscious that the noise might attract unwanted attention. Sam and I exit the truck. Bill stands guard near the vehicle, scanning the area with binoculars. Marcus keeps the rifle close, ready for any disturbance. The house itself is in disrepair, the front steps cracked. The door is closed, though not locked. Inside, the main room is cluttered with broken furniture. A thick layer of dust coats every surface. It's clear no one has lived here for a while. We move slowly from room to room. Family photos hang crooked on the walls. One shows a group of people at a park, smiling for the camera. None seem to match the photograph in my pocket. In a small bedroom, I find a closet containing men's shirts, a woman's coat on a hanger, and a few worn shoes. Nothing indicates that the occupant was named Marina, unless that coat belonged to her. It's impossible to say. I check every drawer, looking for papers or IDs. In the living room, Sam points out footprints in the dust. They look recent, or at least more recent than everything else. A wave of uncertainty crosses his expression. Could be squatters or someone passing through, he whispers. Be careful. We inspect the kitchen, finding old canned goods that have expired. A photo on the fridge door shows a man and a woman, arms wrapped around each other. The woman looks vaguely similar to the one in my photograph, but it's not the same person. The puzzle pieces don't fit. A sudden noise outside the window puts us on high alert, shuffling steps across the front yard. Sam peers through a gap in the curtains and signals for silence. A figure moves past, steps uneven. After a tense moment, it lurches out of view. We remain still until we're certain it's gone. Realizing this house may not be the correct place, we slip out through a side door. Bill waves us over to the truck, quietly urging us to leave. Marcus starts the engine cautiously, and we roll away before the figure can return. Though the search yields no clear answers, something about returning to a residential area triggers small flickers in my memory. I recall being excited about a trip to see someone. Perhaps I was traveling to reunite with Marina. The recollection is fleeting, but it feels more vivid than anything I've experienced before. We decide to circle a few nearby streets. If the neighborhood design looks anything like the photograph, maybe we'll spot the exact house. On the next block, we see a similar porch style. We slow down. This one has a bright teal door, though it's weathered from exposure. Sam notices a sign near the mailbox with letters that have partly peeled away. MAR. The rest is missing. My pulse quickens, for lack of a better term, as I consider the possibility that it once spelled Marina. We park again. Bill and Marcus remain outside while Sam and I approach cautiously. The front windows are boarded from the inside, making it impossible to see. The front door stands ajar, revealing a dark interior. We slip inside, flashlights scanning the living room. A faint odor of stale air greets us. A series of framed photographs lines the hallway. One of them depicts the same person from my pocket photo. Identical smile, standing next to someone I don't recognize. My breath catches in my throat. This has to be the right place. I call out softly, using the name on the back of my photograph. There's no reply. Silence envelops the space. We move further in, stepping around a toppled bookshelf. Sam checks an adjacent bedroom, finding it empty. I proceed to a small home office, noticing personal papers scattered on a desk. Several utility bills, an old laptop, and a few letters remain. Each bears a name matching the one on the sign outside, Marina Palmer. I scan the letters, hoping to find something referencing a friend or relative or any detail about her life. One letter references a flight itinerary. It's for a flight into Detroit, dated about 2 weeks prior to the outbreak becoming widespread. My mind races. If she arrived in Detroit around that time, did we meet here? Were we planning to fly somewhere else together? A sudden crash in the hallway startles us. Sam aims his flashlight in that direction. The shape of a person stands near the entrance, swaying. My pulse hammers, but I keep calm. The figure steps into the dim light, a lifeless expression, clothing torn, vacant eyes that flick toward us, one of the infected. Sam motions for me to stay back. Quietly, he raises a small crowbar. The figure moans softly, the sound echoing in the confined hallway. We don't want to fire a shot and draw attention, so Sam carefully leads it away from me, stepping backward to lure it into the living room. I gather the letters I can, then follow him, looking for a way to exit safely. In a practiced move, Sam manages to evade the figure and slip through the front door. I dart out behind him, slamming the door as best I can, even though it's damaged and won't latch completely. We scramble to the truck, breath hitching. Marcus, seeing our haste, accelerates before the infected can follow us outside. As we drive away, Bill eyes our anxious expressions. "Everyone all right?" Sam nods, and I confirm I'm fine. Then I show Bill the letters and mention the name Marina Palmer. I explain that this might be the person in the photo. Bill glances over the papers. "At least now we have a last name," he says. "Maybe if she's still alive, she found refuge somewhere else." We return to the hangar without further incident, though the streets are still unsettling. Once back inside, Hannah sees the look on our faces and quickly gathers us for a debrief. We explain what happened. I share the new information, the possibility that the woman in my photograph is named Marina Palmer. Hannah suggests cross-referencing the name with the missing persons board, or any records at the hangar. She also wonders if, in time, I might remember more. We pin a note about Marina on the board, along with a copy of the photo. It joins dozens of other pleas from people searching for lost family members or friends. The next few days are filled with the usual efforts to maintain life in the hangar, distributing food, reinforcing fences, watching for any sign of rescue. A vague rumor circulates about the National Guard organizing an evacuation corridor, but no one has concrete proof. In spare moments, I approach newly arrived survivors, asking if they've heard of Marina Palmer. Nobody recognizes the name. However, one older woman mentions that certain groups of survivors have formed enclaves in the downtown district, occupying tall buildings or parking garages. Maybe she found her way to one of those. That idea sparks hope in me. It also leads me to another decision. If the city has enclaves, if there's a group of survivors out there, maybe that's where I need to look next. Bill, Hannah, and the others are concerned about the risks, and they have every reason to be. But each day that passes feels like a missed chance to discover my connection to Marina and the truth of who I am. When I finally gather the courage to announce my plan, to leave the hangar and search downtown, there's a range of reactions. Sam offers to come with me. Bill tries to dissuade me, reminding me how dangerous it is outside. Hannah is torn, knowing the desire for answers but fearing for my safety. In the end, a small group forms. Sam and I, along with 2 new volunteers named Priya and Gavin, decide to attempt a cautious foray into downtown. We pack essentials into a single vehicle. Bill hands me a crowbar, urging me to avoid using firearms unless absolutely necessary. "Noise is the enemy," he repeats. We depart at dawn. The city streets remain as silent as before. We navigate using a map that Sam and I marked with rumored safe zones or enclaves. The drive is tense. Abandoned intersections, the occasional flicker of movement in the distance. We keep our speed moderate, tires crunching over broken glass. Downtown Detroit looms with its skyscrapers, many windows dark, some shattered. Smoke lingers from sporadic fires, We inch through deserted avenues, scanning for any sign of life. After nearly an hour of careful exploration, we see a flicker of light in an upper-floor window of a high-rise. Priya suggests we investigate. We park in an alley behind the building, out of sight. The front lobby doors are locked, but we find a side entrance forced open. Inside, the building has a marble floor covered in debris. A sign indicates that these were once office suites. We ascend several flights of stairs quietly, avoiding the elevators entirely. On the 8th floor, we hear faint voices. Gavin calls out, identifying us as survivors. A door to one of the suites opens, revealing a wary individual with a flashlight. More faces appear behind them. They're a small group of survivors who took shelter here, blocking off the stairwells below to limit access. They greet us with cautious relief, inviting us in. The group's leader, Marta, explains they've stayed alive by venturing into nearby areas for supplies. The building's height gives them a decent vantage point to spot any approaching threats. However, they haven't heard of a Marina Palmer. They allow us to rest for a moment, sharing some water and traded stories. Marta suggests checking another known pocket of survivors, located on the other side of downtown, near a small community center. She marks the location on our map. We thank them for the information, promising to stay in contact if we can. Our journey continues through debris-strewn streets, always on alert for the possibility of infected gatherings. While passing a row of empty storefronts, we spot a single figure in the distance. We slow the vehicle. It's dressed in ragged clothes, staggering aimlessly. The memory of that house encounter tightens my nerves, but we press on. The community center comes into view, partially barricaded. Faint music drifts from inside. We exchange curious glances. Music in this world is a rare comfort. Sam and I exit, calling out that we're fellow survivors. The doors open slowly, revealing a small vigil lit by candles. People are seated in what used to be a basketball court, turned into a dormitory. A portable speaker plays a soothing instrumental track from a battery-powered device. We meet Jacob, who oversees this small enclave. I show him the photograph of Marina. He shakes his head, but offers to pass the word around. "Folks come and go," he says. "If someone by that name shows up, we'll let you know." He scribbles a frequency on a scrap of paper and hands it to me, referencing a shortwave channel they monitor. Despite the setbacks, I refuse to lose hope. Each conversation, each new contact, feels like a step forward. I sense that I'm on the verge of unlocking more memories. After all, I survived a crash. That alone suggests something extraordinary. If the outbreak is truly widespread, then a miracle might be the only reason I'm still breathing. We remain at the community center for a short while, helping them reinforce part of their barricade in exchange for some supplies. Then we head back toward the hangar, mindful of the late hour. Travel at night is ill-advised. On the way back, I stare at the city lights, many of them gone, replaced by pockets of darkness. It reminds me that civilization has changed, possibly forever. When we finally arrive, Bill, Hannah, and the others greet us with relief. A few new faces are present, including a middle-aged couple who managed to slip past the infected. They look exhausted but appreciate the warmth of the hangar. I update Bill on our progress downtown, the enclaves we found, and the lack of immediate clues about Marina. He pats my shoulder sympathetically. "Keep that hope alive," he says. More days roll by, each one bringing small tasks and cautious optimism. I realize I've grown attached to the people here. Their resilience in the face of adversity is inspiring. I find myself jotting down everything I recall in Hannah's notepad. Glimpses of the plane interior, the last conversation I might have had with Marina, the sound of her laughter, the color of her jacket. Then, an unexpected spark of memory arrives late one evening. I'm helping Sam inventory some crates of medical supplies, and a certain label triggers a vivid recollection. I remember rummaging through a carry-on bag during the flight, pulling out a gift intended for someone. It had a small tag with Marina's name. My reason for traveling was to see her, Perhaps I was going to propose, or maybe celebrate an anniversary. The details are fuzzy, but the memory's emotional weight is strong. I nearly drop the box in my hands as the realization hits. Sam notices my expression. I explain the sudden memory. He looks at me with a mixture of sympathy and encouragement. "It sounds like you were close to her," he says gently. "That's got to mean she's out there somewhere." I share the moment with Hannah later. She suggests we intensify the search by distributing Marina's name and photo more widely among the scattered survivor groups. It might be the only way to find closure. The next morning, we gather a few volunteers willing to spread the word. They plan to travel along designated routes that other survivors sometimes use, handing out copies of the photograph. Bill helps create a few more duplicates using a scavenged printer and a little bit of ink. While waiting for any news, I focus on recovery. My head injury has largely healed, though occasional headaches remind me of the crash. The cast on my arm was removed, revealing a stiff limb in need of exercise. I push myself to regain full mobility, performing basic stretches with Hannah's guidance. The future feels uncertain, but I'm committed to uncovering my identity fully. At the same time, more challenges arise in the hangar. The infected appear in larger numbers some nights, pressing against the outer fences. Tension flares among refugees who worry that the defenses won't hold indefinitely. Bill and Marcus coordinate regular patrols, even though resources are limited. Volunteers rotate in shifts to watch the perimeter and maintain the generator. Everyone shares a collective responsibility for survival. In quieter moments, I join Sam near the radio station. We listen to scattered broadcasts. Some are automated emergency signals. Others are survivors seeking help or offering trade. I pay attention to any mention of Detroit or the name Marina Palmer. Most of the time, static crackles in response. Once in a while, we hear a coded message from a group we suspect might be the National Guard, but no definitive rescue plan is mentioned. Despite the bleakness, daily life in the hangar has a sense of community. People rely on one another. Hannah sets up a small clinic schedule. Patrice organizes the distribution of clothing to those in need. A teacher among the refugees named Lily even starts an improvised class for a handful of children, using chalk and a piece of plywood. There is an undercurrent of humanity pushing forward, refusing to surrender to despair. One evening, Sam picks up a faint signal on the shortwave radio. Through heavy static, we catch a few fragments. Shelter, near, medical center, Marina, then silence. I stare at him. He stares back. That name again. Bill hears it too. We spread out a map, marking every known clinic and hospital in Detroit. The signal didn't say which. We'd have to search them all. Hannah warns me not to get my hopes up. It could be a coincidence, but I know better. We plan a scouting trip. Sam and Gavin volunteer. Marcus agrees to lead. The city is quieter than before, but not safer. Empty streets, overturned cars, and too many blind corners. The hospital looms over the skyline like a monument to everything we've lost. Its upper floors vanish into the thick grey sky, windows shattered like broken teeth. We park behind the ambulance bay, where emergency lights once blinked warnings no one heeded. Rust streaks the concrete walls. The smell hits us as soon as we step out, mildew, rot, and the heavy, sour weight of abandonment. We move in with flashlights low and rifles ready. The entrance is partly caved in, so we squeeze through a side door. Inside, it's as bad as we feared, maybe worse. Torn stretchers line the hallways, gurneys flipped on their sides, IV bags dripping onto filthy tile. Medical records are scattered like confetti after a parade that ended in panic. Emergency signs point to trauma units and intensive care, but each corridor tells the same story. People fled, fast, and not all of them made it. Our footsteps echo off the walls as we call out quietly for Marina. No answer. Just the creak of ceiling vents and the occasional shuffle that makes us freeze. The deeper we go, the more signs we see. Bullet casings, dried stains on the floor, shattered glass underfoot. The building groans with age and silence. We search room after room, floor after floor. Then on the 5th level we find it. A waiting area, half boarded up. On the wall beside an old reception desk, pinned crookedly to a bulletin board, is a handwritten note. Group moved to West Wing. Hospital too large to defend. Marina was here. Left for safer location. I read it once, then again. Her name is there in fading ink. My hands tremble and for a moment I forget where I am. She made it here. She was alive. Sam leans in, reading over my shoulder. No one says a word. We don't have to. The proof is in front of us. She's out there, somewhere. But we don't have time to absorb it. A noise, soft, dragging, pulls our attention down the hall. We sweep the corridor with flashlights. Movement, shadows. At first, just one, then more. Figures emerge from the far end of the hallway, swaying with unnatural rhythm. Dozens. We run, no time to count them, no time to fight. Gavin and Sam overturn a metal cart and wedge it into a doorway as we pass, slowing the surge. Marcus covers our retreat, barking directions. We twist through corridors, down a stairwell, and slam through a side exit into the ambulance bay. Once we're in the truck, nobody speaks. I sit in the back, the note clutched in my hand like it's the last thread holding me together. She was here, not a dream, not a false lead, but she's gone again. Back at the hangar, weeks pass. We share the name Marina with every enclave, every new arrival. No one has news, but I keep asking. I remember more now. Her laugh, the ring box in my pocket before the flight. I was going to ask her something that day. Maybe I still will. But new danger brews on the horizon. Rumors travel faster than radio signals. They say the military's planning something, a final sweep to contain what they couldn't stop. An airstrike. No confirmation, but the tension is everywhere. People are packing up, talking about heading north, into the woods, into Canada. Anywhere but here. Then this morning a new signal breaks through the radio static. A robotic voice, official and cold on repeat. Emergency alert, evacuate Detroit now. I stare at the speaker, and then down at the photograph in my hand. Her eyes look back at me. Calm, steady, alive. If she's still here, I'm not leaving without her. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more unsettling creepypastas. Your support keeps my channel alive. Until next time, stay quiet, stay vigilant, and trust nothing, not even the silence.